The planet Varen 9 burned under a red sky. Ash floated through the air like snow, and the sound of explosions rolled across the desert plains. Siren, a young alien soldier with silver skin and glowing eyes, crawled through the rubble of a fallen wall. Her pulse rifle was broken, her armor cracked, her squad gone. She could still hear the Terran war machines moving in the distance, each step shaking the ground. The humans had won. The outpost was lost. Siren pressed her hand to her chest, wound, and gasped. Her blood shimmered blue against the dust. In her mind she whispered, "This is where I die." The war had taught her that humans never spared prisoners. They called them beasts, monsters, enemies of peace. Now one of those monsters lay dying in the sand, waiting for the final shot. Through the smoke, she saw a shape walking closer. Tall, heavy armor, the emblem of Terra on his chest, a human soldier. He moved with calm steps, rifle ready but not raised. Siren's heart pounded. She tried to crawl away, but pain forced her to stop. The human stopped a few meters from her, watching quietly. Captain Ethan Ward had seen too many battles. He had lost friends, brothers, and his faith in the glory of war. He looked at the alien girl trembling before him and thought, "She's just a soldier like me." He could end her life with one pull of the trigger, but something inside him refused. Ethan dropped to one knee. He set down his weapon and took out a small field kit. Siren froze, confused, when he reached for her wound. She flinched, expecting pain. Instead, he cleaned it and sealed it with medical foam. The heat burned, but the bleeding stopped. She blinked, whispering, "Why?" Ethan only said, "Because you're still alive." Outside the smoke, drones scanned the ruins. Ethan knew they would find her signal soon. He pulled a metal plate from his armor and pressed it over her chest to block the scanners. Siren stared at him, realizing he was protecting her. She had heard stories of Terran soldiers, cold, ruthless, perfect killers, but this one looked tired. Human, and strangely kind, voices crackled in Ethan's earpiece. "Sector 7 secure. Execute all hostiles." He looked at Siren, and then at the horizon where his own troops advanced. He whispered, "If they find you, they'll kill us both." Siren could not speak, her throat dry with fear. Ethan lifted her gently, placing her arm over his shoulder. Together they moved toward the shadow of a collapsed bunker. Inside the bunker, the air smelled of dust and burned metal. Ethan placed her down beside an old console and searched for supplies. The light flickered, throwing half-shadows across the cracked floor. Siren watched him reload his pistol, but he never pointed it at her. He tore a strip from his cloak and tied it around her arm to slow the pulse bleed. She felt warmth from his touch, something she never expected from an enemy. In the distance, a Terran gunship roared across the sky. Its spotlight swept over the ruins. Searching for survivors, Ethan pulled Siren behind a wall and turned off his beacon. The gunship passed, leaving silence behind. Siren whispered, "You risked your life for me." Ethan sighed. "Maybe saving one life will balance the 100 I've taken." For a moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of crumbling stone and distant thunder filled the air. Siren studied his face through the helmet glass. He had tired eyes, scarred skin, and the calm of someone who had already lost everything. She wondered if humans felt guilt the same way her kind did. "Rest," Ethan said softly. "I'll find food and water." He walked to the corner where emergency rations were stored. Siren tried to stand, but pain forced her down again. She whispered to herself, "Humans are strange." Outside, lightning split the clouds and a beam from a Terran satellite cut across the wasteland. War was still raging beyond their little shelter. Ethan returned with a small canteen and offered it. Siren hesitated, then drank, the water sharp and cold. Her strength returned a little. She asked, "Why did you come back for me?" He answered quietly, "Because command told me to finish what's left, and I'm tired of finishing things." The silence stretched between them, heavy, but not hostile. For the first time since the invasion, two enemies shared a roof without hate. Ethan sat by the entrance, keeping watch while Siren drifted toward sleep. His rifle lay beside him, but his eyes stayed on the fire that burned outside. He knew that by saving her, he had just betrayed the Terran code. But somewhere deep inside, he felt peace. When dawn came, the sky turned orange over the dead outpost. Siren woke to see Ethan still awake, armor scorched but steady. He looked at her and said, "We can't stay here." The war wasn't over, but something had changed in that bunker. A single act of mercy had broken the chain of endless revenge. And neither human nor alien knew it yet, but the choice Ethan made that night would echo through all of alien history. The sun of Varan 9 rose weak and red through the smoky clouds. Ash fell like soft rain on the ruins. Inside the bunker, Captain Ethan Ward packed his gear quietly. Siren watched him, still weak but alert, her silver eyes following every move. Her body ached, but her wound was healing under the human medicine. Ethan turned to her and said, "We can't stay here any longer." Siren frowned. "Your people will kill you if they find me." He nodded. "They'll kill us both." She didn't understand. "Then why help me?" Ethan paused, tightening a strap on his armor. "Because mercy has to start somewhere," he said softly. They stepped out of the bunker, the world around them silent except for the distant hum of Terran drones. Wrecked ships and burned metal covered the land. The smell of fuel and blood hung heavy in the air. Ethan scanned the horizon through his visor, his HUD flashing red warnings. He motioned for Siren to stay close. Siren limped beside him, her hand resting on the broken wall for support. Every few steps she looked at him, still not believing what she saw. A human walking with an alien like equals. No rage, no hate, only purpose. When she stumbled, Ethan caught her arm, steadying her. "Slow down," he said. "The scanners sweep every 30 seconds." They moved toward the remains of a communication tower. Ethan needed to check the relay lines to see if the Terran command still controlled this sector. When he opened the console, static filled the air. A cracked voice came through. "All hostile units terminated. Final purge in progress." Siren looked down, shaking her head. "You call us hostile, but we only wanted to survive." Ethan's eyes hardened. "I know," he whispered. He turned off the comlink before the drones could triangulate the signal. Siren sat on a pile of debris, her armor glinting faintly in the dull light. She looked at him again. "You were taught to hate us, weren't you?" Ethan nodded. "Since I was old enough to hold a gun. Then why save me?" She asked again. "Because I saw fear in your eyes, not evil," he answered. His voice carried no anger, only truth. For a moment, the wind howled through the broken steel. Then a sound echoed, heavy engines, growing louder. Ethan's visor blinked with alerts. "Gunship inbound." He grabbed Siren's arm, pulling her into cover behind a collapsed shuttle. The gunship passed low, its scanner lights sweeping across the ruins. Siren held her breath, her heart racing. Ethan shielded her with his armor plate until the sound faded away. When the danger passed, she exhaled sharply. Ethan looked at her, a faint smile crossing his face. "You're not used to hiding." She gave a weak laugh. "My kind usually fight to the end." "Maybe that's why you're still alive," he said. "Or maybe because you didn't finish the job," she replied quietly. They rested in silence for a while. Siren studied the strange human technology on his wrist, glowing screens and shifting data. Ethan noticed her curiosity and turned the display toward her. "This," he said, "is a Terran tactical map, but it's useless now." The red zones covered almost the entire planet. Siren realized her home world had become a graveyard. A deep sadness crossed her face. Ethan watched her for a moment, then removed his helmet. For the first time, she saw his face clearly. Tired eyes, rough scars, and human warmth. "You look older than your years," she said softly. "War ages everyone," he replied. She nodded, understanding too well. Suddenly, a faint beep came from the ruined console nearby. Siren turned, her eyes widening. "It's a distress beacon," she said. "It's from my people." Ethan frowned. "If we follow that, we'll walk straight into Terran patrols." Siren's voice trembled. "They might be alive. I can't leave them." Ethan looked away for a moment, torn between duty and conscience. Finally, he said, "Then we go together." They crossed the wasteland slowly, keeping to the shadows of burnt structures. The beacon grew stronger, flashing green on Siren's wrist device. They reached an old cargo pit filled with wrecks. Inside, 3 Varan survivors hid, wounded, weak, terrified. When they saw Ethan, they raised their weapons. Siren shouted, "Stop, he saved me." The others hesitated, disbelief in their eyes. One of them spat, "No human saves Varan." Ethan raised his hands. "Unarmed, believe what you want, but we need to move." Siren stepped forward. "He's right. The drones will find this place." After a tense silence, the survivors lowered their weapons. They followed Ethan's lead, moving toward the cliffs where the drone's range was weaker. As night fell, they found a small cave near a broken waterfall. Ethan built a small fire while the others watched him closely. Siren sat near him, feeling a strange calm. She realized she no longer feared him. He had become something she didn't have a word for. Not friend, not enemy, something in between. When the stars appeared through the smoke, Ethan looked at the sky. He said quietly, "You know, my people once dreamed of peace," Siren replied. "So did mine." Their voices echoed softly in the night, and for the first time in years, a human and an alien shared the same hope beneath the same stars. They didn't know what waited beyond the dawn, but both could feel that the war's story had just changed. And the choice Ethan made that day to save one alien life would soon shake every corner of the galaxy. Night passed slowly on Varan 9. The fire burned low, and the sound of distant thunder rolled across the broken valley. Ethan sat awake, watching the stars fade behind the smoke. Siren and the other Varan soldiers slept nearby, their faces pale and tired. He felt the weight of what he had done pressing on his chest by saving them. He had turned against everything the Terran command stood for. When the first light touched the sky, Ethan stood and walked toward the cave entrance. He checked the scanners on his wrist, red dots flickering close by. "Drones are sweeping again," he whispered. Siren stirred, opening her eyes. "How long do we have?" "Maybe an hour," he said. "Enough to move. Not enough to rest." The survivors gathered their few supplies. One of them, a tall warrior named Kareth, still didn't trust the human, he said. "You'll betray us when they call you back." Ethan looked at him, calm but firm. "If I wanted to betray you, you'd already be dead." Siren stepped between them. "Enough. We don't have time for hate." They started toward the mountain ridge. Wind blew sand across the ruins, hiding their footprints. As they climbed, the ground shook somewhere far below. Another city fell. Ethan turned on his scanner, hoping to pick up a safer route. Instead, a strange encrypted signal appeared. A hidden frequency marked with both Terran and Varan codes. Siren frowned. "That's impossible," she said. "Our systems were never linked to yours." Ethan tapped a few keys. Unlocking the file, a hologram flickered to life above his wrist device. An old recording played, a Terran scientist and a Varan elder standing side by side. Their voices echoed, "Project Unity, joint research between human and Varan scientists. Goal, end the resource wars through shared technology." The image blurred, then cut off with static and a single line of text, terminated by High Command. Reason, potential threat to Terran dominance. Silence fell. Siren's hands trembled. "They killed our peace project." Ethan's jaw tightened. And they lied to both of us. The file was proof that the war was built on deception. Proof that humans and Varen were never true enemies. Only tools of the powerful. Kareth spoke bitterly. No one will believe it, Ethan shook his head. They will if we send it to the Galactic network. But the network is blocked on this planet, Siren said. Then we find a relay tower, Ethan replied. Determination in his voice. They marched through the scorched canyons, chased by dust storms and drone lights. At night, they hid beneath broken arches, moving only when the sky turned dark. Every hour, the drones grew closer, their red beams scanning the rocks. Ethan used his armor plate to distort their signals. Saving the group again and again, Siren watched him in silence, her fear slowly turning into respect. At last, they reached the ruins of a Terran outpost. Inside, a relay tower still stood, its frame half melted but operational. Ethan connected the data core to the main console. A blue light blinked weakly. The system was alive. Siren looked at him nervously. If you do this, you'll be branded a traitor forever. He smiled faintly. Then I'll be a traitor for the right reason. The upload began, lines of code flashing across the screen. Outside, thunder grew louder, not weather, but engines. Terran patrols had found them. Gunfire erupted across the ruins, sparks flying as bullets tore through metal. Ethan grabbed his rifle and shouted, "Get behind the wall!" Siren and Kareth ducked as drones descended in waves, the air filled with smoke and light. Ethan fought with precision, moving like a machine of pure focus. He hit every drone before it reached the console. Siren joined the fight, firing her plasma pistol beside him. For a brief moment, human and alien fought together, not as enemies, but as one. The upload reached 98%. A missile hit nearby, throwing them both to the ground. Ethan's visor cracked, and blood ran down his face. He dragged himself back to the console, slamming his hand against the keyboard. "Come on, finish," he whispered. The bar reached 100. The hologram blinked green. Transmission complete. The file had been sent. Every planet connected to the Galactic network now had access to the truth. Project Unity, the real cause of the war. The secret both sides had buried. But victory came with a cost. A drone fired one last shot, hitting the relay's power core. The explosion threw Ethan backward into the dust. Siren screamed his name, running toward him. He was alive but barely breathing. Smoke and fire rose behind them as the tower collapsed. Siren knelt beside him, pressing her hands to his chest. He opened his eyes weakly, whispering, "They'll see it now." "The truth," she nodded, tears in her glowing eyes. "You did it," Ethan tried to smile. "Not me, us, above them." The night sky shimmered with the flicker of transmission beacons. Across galaxies, the message spread like wildfire. And in that moment, the lie that fueled the war began to crumble. Siren looked at the broken human before her and knew. He had risked everything, not for victory, but for peace. The night sky burned red as Terran warships passed over Varen 9. Their engines lit the clouds like lightning, shaking the mountains below. In the ruins, Siren carried Ethan's half-broken body through smoke and dust. Each step was heavy, her legs trembling, but she refused to stop. Behind her, the outpost lay in flames, drones swarming the area where they had sent the message. Kareth and the other survivors followed close, guarding their flank. "Leave him," one shouted. "He'll slow us down," Siren turned sharply. "He saved us all. I won't abandon him." Her voice cut through the noise like steel. Even Kareth fell silent. Ethan's eyes opened weakly, his breath shallow. He whispered, "You need to get away." "They'll come for me." Siren shook her head. "Then they'll have to come for both of us," he tried to argue. But his voice faded. She pressed a hand to his shoulder. You carried me once. Now it's my turn. They reached a ravine lit by burning wreckage. Terran drones swept the cliffs, red beams scanning the ground. Siren ducked under an arch of rock, hiding Ethan behind her. Kareth took aim at a drone with his plasma rifle and fired. The explosion echoed across the canyon, giving away their position. From the sky came the deep roar of engines. A Terran gunship descended through the clouds, guns glowing white. Run! Siren shouted. She grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him into the valley. Laser fire tore through the sand behind them, blasting holes in the rocks. Kareth and the others covered their retreat, firing until their weapons overheated. One by one, the survivors fell. Kareth was the last. Standing tall against the drone line, he shouted, "Go! Make it count." Before the light took him, Siren didn't look back. She couldn't. Her only thought was to get Ethan to safety. They found shelter under the remains of an old cargo hauler buried in the sand. Inside, the air was thick with oil and dust. Siren laid Ethan down, checking his pulse. He was weak but alive. His eyes fluttered open. How many? Made it? Siren's voice trembled. None. He closed his eyes again. Silent outside. Thunder rolled as the Terran fleet began orbital bombardment. The planet shook with every impact. Siren looked through a broken window at the fire raining from the sky. For the first time, she understood how small they both were in the face of this war. But she also remembered his words. Mercy has to start somewhere. Hours passed in silence. Ethan woke again, breathing hard. He reached for his wrist pad, half cracked from the blast. The message went through, he said faintly. But command won't let it spread, Siren frowned. What do you mean? They'll shut the network down, erase everything. Unless someone defends it, she realized what he was saying. They had to reach the planet's main relay station before the Terrans purged the network. It was deep inside the human command zone. Guarded by heavy mechs, Siren bit her lip. That's suicide, Ethan gave a weak smile. Maybe. But it's the only way peace survives. The next morning they moved again. Ethan leaned on Siren's shoulder, limping through the red dust. The sun was a dying ember above the horizon. They crossed miles of shattered ground, hiding from scanners and patrols. At one point, a Terran drop squad landed nearby, their boots thundering across the sand. Siren pushed Ethan into a trench and lay over him. Holding her breath, the soldiers marched past without seeing them. When the noise faded, she let out a shaky laugh. Ethan whispered, "You're better at this than most of my own." She smirked. Maybe I should be the soldier by dusk. They reached the edge of the main battlefield. Hundreds of drones hovered over a burning city where the relay tower stood. Terran troops guarded every gate. Siren stared at the impossible sight. We'll never get through. Ethan's eyes glimmered under the ash. We don't have to get through. We just have to get close. He took out a small detonator from his armor pack. This will trigger the tower's failsafe, he explained. It'll copy every message on the network and send it across every open channel in the system. Siren realized what he meant. That will draw every ship here, Ethan nodded. Exactly. A faint grin crossed his face. Sometimes chaos is the only way to be heard. They crept through the ruins. Moving from cover to cover, flames lit the broken streets as drones scanned overhead. Every shadow felt like a heartbeat away from death. Ethan moved slowly, wounded but unyielding. When they reached the tower's base, he handed the detonator to Siren. If I don't make it, he said. You press this. She looked at him fiercely. You'll make it. Human. The alarms began to blare before they reached the top. Terran soldiers stormed the stairway. Shouting commands, Ethan turned and fired, holding the line while Siren ran for the console. Bullets tore through the walls, sparks flying, Go! He yelled. Finish it. She slammed the device into the control slot. A flash of light filled the tower as the failsafe activated. The sky above Varan 9 blazed as signals burst from every relay at once. Across space, across colonies, across stations, the truth spread again. Terran soldiers hesitated, hearing the same voice echo in their helmets. The recording of Project Unity, proof that peace was betrayed. Some stopped firing, others froze in shock. The battle below paused as truth replaced orders. But for Ethan and Siren, there was no pause. The tower shook as explosions rocked its foundation. Ethan turned back to her, blood on his armor, but a calm in his eyes. He said quietly, "You were right. Maybe you were the soldier all along." Siren smiled through tears. "And maybe you were never the monster we were told." The roof collapsed as the last explosion tore through the base. Light swallowed everything. The hunt across fire was over. But its echo carried through the stars, because one human and one alien had dared to stand against the endless machine of war. Silence filled the air after the blast. The sky of Varan 9 was painted with smoke and fading light from orbit. The Terran fleet could see the relay tower burning like a second sun. Every ship received the same transmission. The truth Ethan had sent was now unstoppable. Across the stars, soldiers paused mid-battle. Commanders stared at their screens in disbelief. The message of Project Unity replayed again and again. Humans and Varan once worked side by side. Dreaming of peace, it shattered the foundation of the war. The lie was broken, and nothing could hide it anymore. On the surface, Siren awoke among the ruins. Her armor was cracked, her body bruised. Ash covered her face as she pushed away the debris. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. The air was hot, the ground still glowing from the explosion. Then she saw him, lying a few meters away, motionless beneath a fallen beam. She crawled to him, her hands shaking. His armor was torn, the visor shattered. She brushed away the dust and saw his face, pale but peaceful. "Ethan, wake up," she begged. He stirred faintly, his lips moving. "Did it work?" he whispered, barely audible. Siren smiled through tears. "Yes." The whole galaxy saw it. He closed his eyes, a faint smile touching his face. That it was worth it. Above them, the sky began to clear. Terran ships stopped firing. Their guns silent, no more bombs, no more fire. Only the strange calm of realization. Siren looked at Ethan and said softly, "You changed everything." His breathing slowed, his hand fell limp. She held it tightly, whispering words in her language. A soldier's farewell. And for the first time since the war began, she cried for a human. Hours passed. Terran med drones arrived, scanning the field. They found 2 life signatures, 1 alien, 1 human, side by side. Instead of killing her, they stopped, uncertain. The transmission Ethan sent had already changed their orders. The drones' protocols froze, their directives rewritten by the truth now spreading across systems. Siren was taken to an orbiting medical ship. She carried Ethan's insignia in her hands, refusing to let it go. Terran doctors tried to understand why a Varan soldier protected one of their own. She said quietly, "Because he was more human than any of you will ever be." The words echoed through the corridors. And for many of them, it was the first time they understood what the war had cost. Weeks later, across the galaxy, governments fell under public outrage. Both Terran and Varan leaders were forced to face what they had done. Armistice talks began for the first time in a century, and the name Ethan Ward became a symbol of defiance and hope. They called him the human who refused to kill. Years passed. Varan 9 was rebuilt into a shared city, half human, half alien. At its center stood a monument of 2 figures. A human and a Vaeran, standing side by side beneath the same sky. At the base were carved the words, "Mercy has to start somewhere." Siren became the first Vaeran ambassador to Earth. She walked into the Terran Council Hall, carrying Ethan's insignia on her chest. The crowd of humans rose in silence. No one saw an enemy that day, only unity born from sacrifice. When she spoke, her voice carried across the hall. He saved one life, and in doing so, he saved us all. Outside the council dome, a new dawn rose over Earth. Blue light reflecting from the rebuilt peace ships waiting in orbit. For the first time in history, Terrans and Vaeran worked side by side, the shadow of war finally fading into memory, high above, in the eternal dark of space. The last signal from Vaeran 9 still echoed across the network. A simple recording, Ethan's final words, sent moments before the tower fell. If we stop seeing enemies and start seeing people, maybe the stars will finally know peace. The message played in every corner of the galaxy, across colonies and fleets, a reminder that even in the heart of war, one act of mercy can change the fate of worlds. And so history remembered that day, not as the fall of Vaeran 9, but as the day humanity remembered its heart, the day one human's choice rewrote the story of the stars forever.